Welcome to this, I don't even know what to call it, video series. As you all know, I've been exploring Puff Puff. I've been trying to figure out flavors, what could work, no yeast Puff Puff as well. I've been playing around with a lot of that. And I came across a tweet by Tobi Smith a few weeks ago at this point, I think, where he was talking about the importance of temperature in Puff Puff making. And I thought to myself, yes, we're always winging it. We always say, oh, low to medium heat. Oh, don't let the oil be too hot. Don't crowd the pan. All of that is important, but what temperatures actually work? What temperature should your ingredients be at? All of that. So I happened to get him on the call today, and he's going to be talking to us about that. But before we do that, I'll allow Tobi introduce himself.
All right. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. My name is Tobi Smith. I work at All I Do Is Cook, and I blog a lot. We post recipes, send food to people across the United States. It's basically a service that you can get authentic Nigerian food all over the country. So that's what I do full time, and blog on the side as well. And so,
I think, when did you start this? I was trying to go back to like my very first message with you. I don't even remember when that was.
Yeah, it's been really way back.
Yeah, like it's been really way back. I remember you used to post your recipes and I was like, oh, I love these pictures. But I don't remember when you started this. So when did you start All I Do Is Cook?
So All I Do Is Cook started, I would say, in 2016. I would say early 2016.
Okay.
It basically started as so in 2015, I started a master's degree, and broke college student, same story. You're looking for, ways to stretch your dollar to make sure that you're at least trying to eat good with the amount of money you had. So what I used to do was I used to buy things with whatever I could afford and then make things out of them. So basically like trying to make whatever I could get for the little money I had look good and taste good. And then I'll take a picture of it after I'm done and then post a picture of it. And then, a couple of my friends, probably at that time it was Snapchat, and they would be like, hey, how did you make this? So I'll go on my notes app and then I'll type it up and then send it to them. It first started texting it via iMessage or Snapchat, but then I shifted to Notes app. And then another friend of mine was like, you know what? You could just get a free blog and then post these things on there so that you can send people links instead of having to type every single time. And, that was really how it started. I just kept doing it. People started asking, hey, can you do this with this kind of ingredient? Or I'd have an idea, or I just want to play around with it. So it just kept going. Posts just started increasing on the blog, and pretty much, that's how it started. And it got to a point where the requests from people never stop requesting things, right? Requests from people shifted from, can you write a recipe about this, to, okay, I've tried to make this recipe, it's not working, it's not as good as it looks, or on the blog, can you send it to me? Just make it and send it to me. And I was like, that's probably impossible, but just had to like explore it, looked into different options. And it took us about 14 to 16 months to actually figure out how to comfortably do this consistently. And that's basically the story.
14 to 16 months is a long time.
Yeah, really long time.
A long time. Yeah. But well done. I mean, I think this past week was LA Times, if I'm not mistaken, and Vogue.
Yes. Yeah, apparently we didn't know about the LA Times feature because it was already done first week on the 4th of June. And the person that works on our comms and growth just discovered something in the back end and said, it seems there was a feature from somewhere. And then we realized that, we're listed on there. And then earlier in the month, we got featured on Vogue via, Chef Kwame's article. So that was a really good thing to happen, for sure.
Yes, get it.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about Puff Puff. And I know that, I don't know if you've launched your Puff Puff that you're selling to people in the States, but I know that you're working on something. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So from time actually, we've been the store on the All I Do Is Cook store. We've been carrying puff puff. We've been doing variations of it, so chocolate chip, butterscotch, and caramel. But I mean, people keep asking, and which is something that's been a theme. So people started asking for a mix of everything. So they just wanted a different variation of it. So people say, "Oh, I don't want to eat all chocolate. I'm watching my calories. Let's see." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." So we talked about it, and then we decided to introduce a variety pack. So it's pretty much it. We've been selling puff puff online and shipping it for over a year now. So that's something. Yeah.
That's interesting. Well done.
Thank you so much.
So let's get into why we're here. Temperatures for puff puff making. So my first question would be, what temperature should the ingredients be when you're making puff puff?
So for the ingredients, basically, what I've realized is ingredients are best at room temperature.
Yeah.
Every single thing at room temperature, and I mean, you don't have to do too much to achieve that. Just bring them out of your pantry, and that's pretty much it. Everything room temperature, depending on where you are. Room temperature ranges from, so
25.
this and that. Yeah, right. So I just have to to change it from Fahrenheit. Yeah, I used to be Celsius, but now I'm Fahrenheit, so I have to change it back. So yeah, the room temperature for all the ingredients is totally perfect for
Okay. So let's talk about temperatures to activate yeast. I know that people say warm water, but that means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Warm, is it? Because I've seen people use hot water, and I know that it's not supposed to be that hot. So tell me a little bit about that.
So I have I don't know if it's a uniquely different approach to activating yeast. So I'll go back a little bit. One of the reasons why a lot of people like to use the recipes that started posting at All I Do Is Cook is because it's sort of like the lazy but effective way to go. So you're looking at a recipe that usually takes people 3 to 4 hours, and then you can finish doing it in like an hour, 45 minutes. So most times my approach to cooking is, as much as possible, if I can use one pan for everything, I'll do that. If I can mix everything in one bowl, I'll do that. If I can do it in less than the regular time, I'll do it. So I tried to look for a way where I didn't have to, because a lot of puff puff recipes, they activate the yeast first and then add it with water and then add it into the dry ingredients. But what I do personally is I just lump everything inside one bowl and then just mix everything. So mixing all the dry ingredients, because puff puff is super simple. It's dry and one wet ingredient, and then you just put everything together. So that's pretty much how I do it. So to temperatures to activate the yeast, since I mix the flour, the sugar, the nutmeg, all of that already, the water is just what determines how it starts working.
Yeah.
And also, I've seen a lot of people have problems with the kind of yeast that they use. I use the fast acting, dry yeast. So it works. It's been working. It's never failed. For me, just mixing it with the dry ingredients. So that's what I've been doing. So what I've realized is over collecting different temperatures and testing. So I realized that. So for Fahrenheit people that would see this. So the water being too cold, it takes longer to rise, which is normal. If it's not warm enough, it takes longer to rise. Now, what I've realized on the extreme end of it is, if it's too hot, then it over rises and then your batter gets thinner. So it's harder to scoop it. So I've seen that the ideal temperatures to rise for your water to be, that's if you're using the method of just pouring the water in there, is between say 114 degrees Fahrenheit to say 117 Fahrenheit. So that's going to be 45 degrees Celsius to 47, 48, max Celsius. That's ideal. It's going to rise at the normal rate that it should rise. It's probably going to take you say about 8-10 minutes before the yeast starts acting properly. Then you can see the batter rising, and then you can see the bubbles and stuff like that. Yeah. So that temperature is really what I've considered to be ideal. It's a little bit above warm water, but it's not. Yeah.
Okay. If you mix the puff puff, right, and leave it to rise again, what's the temperature to store that mix, or do you have to even store it?
The batter, for me, I just leave it on the counter.
Okay.
And that's usually, if your room temperature still, room temperature is perfect for that. And room temperature like 27 degrees Celsius, 25 degrees Celsius, depending on where you are. Now, at some point, so there was a point I didn't have a lot of time to spare, like generally in life, like I was just rushing to do everything. So I discovered a very quick method to rise batter, and the method was turning on the oven and setting it to about, what would I put that at? So like 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And then leaving it on for about 10 minutes, then turning it off. So about 5 minutes after turning it off, you can put the batter in the oven, and that like activates the yeast to work faster. But the thing is, a lot of people might get it hotter than that, and then your batter gets too thin to scoop and to drop and all that stuff. So it's just whatever you're trying to do. If you want to cover it with a towel, or if you want to put it somewhere, or you can just put it close by where you're cooking or close to the oil that's frying. That heat, just that residual heat, will most likely do it. But as regards storing, I don't do any particular, anything fancy, because just leave it on the counter or leave it on the table, wherever it is, and just take it from there.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's get mixing, and I guess my last two questions are asked once you're done mixing. So show us your methods.
No problem. All right. So first of all, I pre-mix this just because just to save time, pretty much. But in here, that's inside this really nice shiny silver bowl, I had flour, sugar, nutmeg, and yeast. Pretty much that was it. So the first thing I do most of the time, add the flour and add the sugar, add the nutmeg, and then I try to mix that. Then I take my yeast from pantry, wherever it's stored, and then I add that to it and mix it properly. So now, because I don't activate my yeast separately, I want to make sure that I mix the dry ingredients with a whisk so that the yeast is evenly distributed through everything, and then measure out my water, check the temperature. I've gotten to a point where I know what setting of the tap hot water to, sometimes I cross-check it, but for the past maybe 7-8 times, I've been trying to make sure I cross-check the temperature, and then making sure that, let me see. So the ideal, I think we talked about the ideal temperature for the water, right? Yeah, just making sure that's it, and then I mix it with my hand or with a whisk, depending on how much it is.
Yeah.
So making sure it's well incorporated. Sometimes I used to think if you beat the yeast well to start working faster. But yeah, mixing the yeast properly with the whisk, making sure there's no flour clumps anywhere. Sometimes it's advisable to just use your hand to make sure you're checking everywhere at the bottom of the bowl to make sure that there's nothing. Because if you have, and for me, I use exact recipes. A couple people just eyeball things. Like I use an exact recipe to do it. So if I have a specific amount of flour, a specific amount of sugar, a specific amount of yeast, and there's a clump of flour there, that means the rest of the batter is not going to work as well as it should be. So mixing it, comprehensively is very, very good to getting a good batter. And I always tell people puff puff is all about the batter. If you get the batter right, then everything does, except the heat and frying part. But yeah, the most important thing is the batter, because you can't rework the batter most of the time, because once you've mixed water in there, it's you can't add more flour or something. It's just, that's the end of it. So taking as much time as possible to mix it is the winner in the whole of the thing. Yeah. So for the recipe, I've realized a lot of things with puff puff, and I've seen that yeast, some people get the right yeast, get the right flour, get the right sugar, get everything is right, but it still doesn't rise as much as it is. So from what I learned that if you have too much sugar in your puff puff, the yeast doesn't work. And there are the yeast, the popular active dry yeast. There's a ratio of flour to sugar or to salt or stuff that makes it work ideally. Now, what I've realized, whatever recipe that you're using, if your flour to sugar ratio is more than 3-1, so that's 3 cups of flour, 1 cup of sugar, or whatever, 3 kg of flour, 1 kg of yeah, I think it should work that way. But we use cups. Yeah, we use cups. So if you're using, say, 3 cups of flour and you want your puff puff sweeter, and then you put like 2 cups of sugar, your yeast is not gonna rise as much as it should. I think there's a tolerance space of anything below half a cup, so you can do 3 cups to maybe 1.5 or anything below. But anything above that, it takes longer to rise just because now your batter is heavier because of that sugar. So the power of the yeast. So what some people do, or what I have done in the past to hack that, is increasing the yeast by maybe like a teaspoon or something. So just so that there's more allowance for it to yeast power to rise the batter. So yeah, those are the things that would ideally affect anything regarding like mixing puff puff or it's rising at the right temperature and stuff. Now, what I've figured out about the puff puff batter is whenever you've mixed your puff puff batter and everything is set, and then you're ready to let it sit to rise, then your batter would rise perfectly. And that's if you got the ingredients right, you got the batter right. Your batter, the internal temperature of your batter should be between 37 or let's say 36 to 38 degrees Celsius. So at that point, it takes say exactly between 12 to 15 minutes to rise. And then there's like 3 stages of the rising of the batter. There's like the initial stages when it's just beginning to activate, when it is like really, really in its things in the mood. The yeast is in the mood. The third stage is you've left it for way too long. The third stage is where you can see the bubbles on top of it, and then now it starts caving in. So you start seeing like lines across, and then the batter is like swallowing itself, right? It's coming down. And then after that, if you leave it for way too long without using it, then it gets thinner, just because you spent too long and that. And for me, ideally, I love to like fry my batter at like room temperature, whatever temperature it is. Really, I don't like it to get too hot or hotter than that, because then it gets uncomfortable for you to like scoop it and fry it. Yeah.
All right, Tobi, you've taken us through a number of things today. I feel like anybody that's watching this video has learned some notes. I feel like you've broken it down from the texture, even if texture wasn't what we're supposed to be talking about, but I really appreciate that you've told us about texture as well. So now we're trying to fry. So what temperature ideally should people be using to fry puff puff?
So ideal temperature for frying puff puff would be 345 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And that's like 173, 174 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
So if you have like most people over here would maybe have a fryer, or it has like the knobs, the dials, the settings. But if one doesn't have a fryer, to get like really good temperature, like a thermometer works well. So I have like a stovetop. I have a fryer. I also have like a stovetop frying thing with a thermometer in there. So I just check temperatures, right? Sometimes you can get some room to 350 degrees, but what I've realized is anything lower than 330 or let's say 320 degrees Fahrenheit, then your heat starts, your puff puff would soak up the oil. So basically, if it's not hot enough, it soaks in the oil. The batter would soak in the oil, and then it gets heavy with the oil, obviously. So it's not gonna be able to flip by itself.
That's true.
That's what makes it not be able to flip by itself. If it's too hot, then it flips fast, but it's gonna burn because the outside is gonna be hard rock. It's gonna burn, and it's not gonna be cooked all the way inside. So 345, between 340 and 350. So another thing that the temperature of the oil determines is what the color is gonna be. So closer to 345, 340, it's going to be, very, very light. I'll say light skin, light skin gold. And then, closer to 350, 355, it's going to be darker. It gets dark real fast. So just depending on preference, and also closer to the hotter temperature. So that'll be like, say, maybe going to 180 degrees Celsius. It's going to be darker. It's going to have it's going to be tougher outside, on the outside of it. So yeah, so ideally 345, 173 degrees Celsius or 174 is like very, very like the ideal temperature to fry it. And then it's usually fried. I mean, once you see, so whenever it's frying, you drop the batter in there, and then once that one side cooks, the reason why it flips over is because there's an air pocket on top of it. So the bottom, the more it fries, the heavier it gets. So it's just like if you drop a balloon that has water on inside a swimming pool or something, sometimes it tries to tumble over, right? So that's exactly how it is. So when that part fries, it goes up there. When it fries, it has the air and everything. So the batter part that's hard or that's heavy now flips just because the heavy one is on top, so it goes up and down. So once that fries and you see that it rolls easily, that's when your puff is fried all the way. Sometimes it should take nothing more than 5-7 minutes for it to fry properly, and after that you're good to go.
So I know I've read somewhere, maybe not puff, but I read somewhere about frying treats, I guess, fried dough. And the more of the dough you put into the oil, the more the temperature drops.
Yeah, definitely. So just depending on how big your frying pan is or how big that's what also determines the temperature. That's why I gave a temperature range for about 10 degrees. Now, if you have a large pot, you can do closer to 350, because by the time you add your batter in there, it drops the temperature. But also, that's the more reason why you want your batter to be room temperature. Because if your batter is too cold, then it drops it really drastically and then it soaks up the oil. If your batter is too warm or too hot, then the temperature stays at that point and then it burns. So if it's room temperature, the hot oil and the batter, they adapt to each other, and then it fries at say 3 more degrees hotter. But when it's warm, let's say your batter is already like closer to hot than room temperature. Whenever you drop it in the oil and then it starts frying, the temperature stays the same. Just because if you put a hot object in a hot object, it's not going to lose temperature, so it's burned. So that's why it's good to maintain that temperature, so that with the constant source of heat, it gets back. It's still 3 or 4 degrees plus minus with that temperature that was set. So yeah, it's also easy to tweak things as you fry, pretty much, just to make sure that you're good.
All right, so show us.
So here's the batter. It's around the this is like optimal rising temperature. It's rising to as much as it can, and right now it's beginning to swallow itself pretty much. So what I do is, before I start to fry, I like to get my hands wet, definitely, so that the batter can go out of my hand pretty easily. So first things I do is to kind of fold it in to get a feel of how the batter is, so that I know, okay, how to pick it up. Now, some people just grab it and go because it's very airy at that point in time. But I like to like put everything together, and then I just play with it, see how thick it is. Ideally, your batter should not be too liquidy.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't like pour everywhere. So that, and then pinch and then drop it. So whenever you drop it, it gets to the bottom of the pan. It shouldn't stay there too long, just so that it doesn't burn.
Yeah.
And then it should come up immediately. So yeah, that's pretty much how I go about it. Play with it, roll it into a ball, and then drop it. That's what I usually do. Where you put your batter when you're frying also matters, because you're frying, it's very easy to keep it too close to the heat. But then you just have to have in mind that putting it too close to the heat also makes the yeast start overworking.
Yeah.
And get thinner as well. So it's best to, try and keep it away from the heat. Also, the reason why I try to keep it as far as possible from the heat is, if you want to put in like toppings, chocolate chip, or whatever it is that you want to put in there, you don't want your fillings to melt before they get into the heat, because once they start melting, then your batter is messy. Also, it makes the batter thinner and harder to grab. So you have like a chocolate chip, it's melted, it turns into liquid, right? So that's messing up your batter's consistency. So you want your batter as cool as possible. Yesterday, I actually tried frying cold batter, but what I realized was cold batter actually drops the oil temperature too much.
Yeah.
And then room temperature is super, super ideal for frying puff-puff.
Yeah, I put the puff-puff is in there, and then you can see that it's gonna like flip by itself, just as I said, just because temperature is right. That's my thermometer. It's about almost 345, 346 right now. So it's still regular temperature. That's when the puff-puff would flip by itself. It fries by itself pretty much. You don't have to touch it, but sometimes you want to like nudge some of them, just so that they just the same way people just tap it, or you just roll it around, and then you get whatever it is. Sometimes you get those stubborn ones that are not going to flip, and then you just have to do it by hand. Most times that happens whenever the pan is overcrowded, and then it doesn't have that room to like flip by itself or move around. So that's when you see some that some get lighter on the other side, some are darker on the other side. But ideally, if you space them out properly, which a lot of people don't have the time or the patience for, it should just work by itself. And then you just look at it. At this point, to a large extent, most of it is like fried, say like 80%. So now it's just about color, getting the right color that you want. Do you want it darker? Some people like theirs like this type of color. Other people like it darker. But just because, we do this commercially, and a lot of people might think, oh, it's not cooked outside, it's still light. Right. So we just need to, be dark or darker than that. So pretty much, that's how it is. And then once everything is the same color as much as you can, then you can just take it out. Another thing with dropping the puff-puff is I realized that some of them could get darker faster than the others, just because you drop them earlier than the other thing. So that's why it's good to also maintain a good temperature, because if the temperature is off, then you have one that's burnt, you have one that's half cooked, and then you probably don't know where it is anymore in all of the pan. So you want to scoop everything at the same time. Some are good, some are bad. So just making sure you have the right temperature from the start. And pretty much it's gonna go well.
It looks nice. I'm really hungry.
Yeah. I'll probably eat one of these and then give the rest out. and then give it like 1 minute, 2 minutes to just scoop all of this out onto like a paper towel, which is like the best thing to do, a paper towel. And it's great to use like really good quality paper towel just so that it absorbs all of the oil that's coming out of it. Yeah. And that's another mistake that a lot of people make. Some people just scoop it and put it in the plate. And what happens is that whenever the puff-puff like releases all the oil that's in it, it soaks it back up. So you're ending up with like oily puff-puff just because, you know, you didn't put it on the surface where that absorbs everything. Sometimes I just try to like leave it in there with the fryer, try and get as much more color as possible, and then just draining it out and paper towel. I think this part is also like really good to do, to let it drain out as much as possible. Then just transfer everything out there.
All right. So Tobi, my final question is, now that it's out of the oil,
okay,
how do we keep it warm? How long would it stay warm for? I don't know if you've explored that as well.
Yeah, I mean, once the puff-puff gets out of the heat of the oil, it starts dropping temperatures. Now, also, it depends on how you stack it.
Okay.
So if you put everything on a flat plate, it's going to lose temperature faster. It's going to drop in temperatures faster. If you stack everything inside a basket or something, it's going to keep the temperatures more. But depending on how, if you follow the recipe to the T, you know, stacking puff-puff on each other will most likely like squish.
Yes.
And I mean, the beauty of the puff-puff is it's round, it's bouncy and all that. Like, it's not great when it's like flat anymore. So yeah, temperature drops really fast, but a very good way that I found to reheat it is a microwave. And you know, just this almost exactly the same way you might reheat pizza.
Okay.
Just because sometimes, you know, wrapping it with like a wet paper towel works perfectly fine. Wrapping it, or just if you have everything in a bowl, putting a wet paper towel on it, and then not 10, 12, 15 seconds at the most, just depends on how hot you like it. Sometimes you could use the oven if you like to use the oven. I don't like to use the oven because it's just too much stress. It takes too long. So if you use the oven, setting your temperature to like medium heat, and then just putting it in there for like 5-10 minutes, it brings it back to life. And it's great. But I mean, nothing like beats, like, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's pretty close. The reason why I prefer to warm it in the microwave with a wet paper towel is because of the outside. So for puff-puff outside, when it's cold, it's, you know, a little harder than it should be.
Yeah.
Then you put it in the microwave without any covering or anything, it gets tougher. But the wet paper towel adds some moisture into it, and then it has that soft outside, a little bit, you know, stretchy outside. It gets back to what it usually is. So yeah, that's pretty much how I like to reheat my puff-puff.
Okay, I love that. All right, so thank you very much, Tobi. I feel like I've learned so much today. I'm so jealous that you're eating puff, but I'll go make my own now that I have a bit more. I know a few more tips, and I know how to improve my puff-puff.
Right.
I'll also take a lot of the things that you said and try to replicate it with the no yeast puff-puff as well. And I'll let you know how that goes. But before we go, let people know what you're up to and what they should expect from you.
Well, currently we've just been, you know, looking at expanding our offerings, like product offerings on the store to include a couple more items. A lot of people have, so we do like a feedback form thing at the middle of every year, at the end of the year. We've implemented some changes, so, you know, we're looking at adding some more product offerings into the store, you know, varieties of oil, you know, variety is the spice of life. So, different things, more options in the store. So yeah, that's pretty much what people would be looking out for. And I think they're pretty exciting additions that we'll be putting out there for sure.
So right now you're just delivering to the States?
Yes, we currently just do all the states, 50 states except Hawaii or Alaska. We currently just deliver. We've been working on Canada, and we've done a couple tests to the United Kingdom, Scotland, and all of those places, Europe. But yeah, we're looking at before the end of the year to see if we can actually start actively shipping to Canada, which close neighbors here. It would be unfair to them if we started Europe before Canada. So yeah, we're looking at starting to Canadian shipping as soon as we can.
So tell us your website, your social media handles, so people can follow them.
So the website is very easy: www.allidoiscook.com. It's like allidoiscook.com. And social media handles are All I Do Is Cook, one word, and US. All I Do Is Cook US. So ALLIDOISCOOKUS. Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest as well. So that's something that I don't understand, but we're on there.
You're on there anyway.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you so much, Tobi. I really appreciate this. And hopefully we could talk about one of your other experiments or one of your other musings going forward.
Yeah. There's a lot of them. Someday, we'll take it little by little.
Yes. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see on this page, and maybe I'll just have it.